Welcome to the Creative Penn podcast. I'm Joanna Penn, thriller author and creative entrepreneur, bringing you interviews, inspiration and information on writing craft and creative business. You can find the episode show notes, your free author blueprint and lots more at thecreativepenn.com. And that's Penn with a double N. And here's the show. Hello creatives, I'm Joanna Penn, and this is episode number 766 of the podcast, and it is Friday the 16th of August 2024 as I record this. In today's show, I'm talking about a touch of the madness, creativity in writing and filmmaking with Larry Kasanoff, who has been part of films like Terminator 2, Platoon, Mortal Kombat and more. He's also a really super happy, positive guy with lots of great tips on perseverance, creativity, focusing on creating what you love as well as what makes money, how the movie industry uses AI and more. Plus, will I be pitching Nicolas Cage? Now there's a question. Find out in our discussion coming up in the interview section. In publishing things this week, BookBub has a good article around a survey they did on advertising options with Facebook, Amazon, and of course, BookBub Ads. They are all quite different and you can use them for different things. Now, of the survey, more than half of the authors who responded, but of course these are going to be authors who use BookBub Ads, but more than half advertise weekly or more. The majority of promotions were on the first book in a series, so that makes sense. Now, then it compares platforms, so it says BookBub was the most popular option for ease of use and flexible targeting. And if you don't know, BookBub featured deals are kind of famous, but BookBub also has pay-per-click ads, which you can target per author, per store, per country. It is very, very good targeting. And for example, I use BookBub Ads for Kobo in Canada, very specifically, or you can also use BookBub Ads to direct traffic to your own store, so your Shopify store or a homepage or whatever. So that can be really useful. Meta ads, so that's Facebook, Instagram, etc., were the most flexible in terms of format, and that's true. And of course, flexibility is a blessing and a curse. It also has the widest reach to a large user base. People also noted that you can advertise full price books on Meta, and I found this too. So using Facebook ads at full price to your own store can be fantastic. Also bundle deals and much more. Amazon ads are, of course, only for Amazon, and most people said it made it easy to track conversions and also promote books in KU. So you can see that each one can perform a different purpose in your marketing campaigns. Now, personally, I mostly do paid ads in campaigns, which are shorter periods of focused attention, and I now use as much AI as possible. So I'm not running ads all the time, although actually, as I record this, I am running some BookBub ads at the moment. I am warming things up for the launch of Spear of Destiny, which will be on all platforms on the 1st of September. So I'm kind of starting to warm up the algorithms and get things moving on that series, ready for that 13th book in the series. So my Amazon ads are auto ads. You choose the book and the budget and the algorithm does the rest. But what you can do is kind of juice the algorithm a bit by using BookBub ads to send traffic to the Amazon page, warm it up, and then the algorithm will pick that up and kind of carry on. I find this works best if you are very in genre on Amazon. So I use it for non-fiction only. And sometimes I put ads on the first in series for fiction campaign. I also run Facebook ads for things like Kickstarter, did that recently. I run BookBub ads in these campaigns and I turn them off. I don't like running ads all the time. And in fact, there's loads of tips from authors in the article. And one person noted, it's very easy to spend a lot of money quickly. So start slowly, stick to a budget you can afford. And of course, you need to do testing. So I know for each series what authors I'm targeting, say on BookBub, and I do a bit of that. And so you have to mix and match things over time. One tip for the ads, which I thought was good, keep it simple and uncluttered. Have a nice cover, so the book cover, with a look and a title that communicates the genre. Try to use language that will attract your specific readers. Focus on one point and one hook you're trying to communicate. Know your audience, what books they're reading, and which of those are like yours. So this is where you very much need to know your comp authors, your comparison authors. So many people say, well, do you need paid ads? I can't afford paid ads. Well, no, you don't need to use paid ads. You can do without them if you do other forms of marketing. I think a lot of the problem is people who say they don't want to do paid ads also don't want to do other forms of marketing. So, for example, most of my direct sales for creativepenbooks.com comes from this podcast, as well as my email list and the Patreon. People like yourselves, many of you listening, who know that I'm asking you to buy direct first. And so I don't need to use ads to my Creative Pen bookstore. People buy that. I mean, I could, but I don't at the moment. Some people are also selling a ton of books by using social media, for example, TikTok. And if you are a heavy social media user and you're creating just content and that's driving book sales, then amazing. But eventually these platforms become pay to play. That used to work on Facebook, but it doesn't anymore. You're also paying with your time if you focus on creating a lot of social stuff, or maybe you're doing live events, selling from stage, or doing conventions or whatever. So there are many, many ways to do book marketing. Paid ads is just one thing. And in fact, in my book, How to Market a Book, I've only got like 2 pages on paid ads, and the rest of the 70,000 words are on other forms of marketing. So it's certainly not the necessary one. It is the one that a lot of people talk about because it can bring you a lot of traffic. But of course, remember, we like to focus on profit. That's what we like. But yes, you do need to do some kind of marketing if you want to sell any books, but it doesn't have to be paid ads. In personal news, I'm so excited. I did a really big push this week and the first draft of Blood Vintage is done. I am super thrilled. I have printed it. It is on my desk in a folder. As ever, I do hand edit, so with scribbling all over an actual paper manuscript. And I may well even put this one in the Kickstarter since it sold immediately when I did that with Spear of Destiny. But yes, my first edit is a hand edit. And I've also been looking at the timeline for a Kickstarter. So originally, Blood Vintage, I thought it is a standalone folk horror novel. I wanted to have it sort of out there at Halloween, but what I've now found out is that if I did special editions closing on Halloween, then I'm going to then sign, I guess, in November, and then I'm going to hit the Christmas post. And I've been talking with Book Vault, and there's a lot of issues with Christmas post in terms of it becomes more expensive, but also the shipping times. And so I'm actually thinking of bringing it forward. I'm pretty happy with the book. Actually, I'm really happy with the book. I think this is a story that's been brewing for a while, and yeah, it just kind of came out. But you have to see the cover. If you're on my JF Penn email list, you've seen it already, but you can see the cover at jfpenn.com/blood vintage. So jfpenn.com/blood vintage, all one word. And that will redirect you to the cover at the moment as I record this. And then it will redirect to the Kickstarter pre-launch page once that's up, and the book in the future. And this is another top tip. Obviously, if you're doing any launch, make sure you have a redirect link that you can point to different places, especially if you're doing this sort of phased launch. You want to point it at different places at different times. So yes, the awesome cover, which I made with Midjourney and then worked with my cover designer Jane to do the fonts and everything. So I'm just thrilled with it, and I'm so excited. I'm actually going to mock up the special edition with the first draft. Now, this is dangerous, but the other thing is that my cover designer Jane is going away for 3 weeks. So I need to get everything done if I want to have this out by Christmas. And I think this is going to be my most super book yet. I need to know the costings in order to do the Kickstarter. So my plan is to do this first draft thing. So basically I have to pay Jane twice to format the special edition because this isn't the final text, but it's close enough to know the page count and to mock it up for pictures for the Kickstarter. I'm super excited that sprayed edges are also now available with Book Vault Bespoke, their bespoke service. So I'm either going to go, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. We're having a look at the options, but very excited. Also, if you read German, so I'm starting to experiment with translation again because of the developments in the AI first draft. And if you're in my Patreon, you'll know the process and working with proofreaders and stuff, but this is super interesting. So if you read German, my short story, Under the Zoo, Unter dem Zoo is out in German. It is in KU, so I use KU in Germany just because I can't do all the marketing I do in English. I am, as I said, I'm experimenting with translation. We will see how this goes. I would like to sort of help an appetite for licensing the wider series, perhaps in these other markets, so I'm looking at that. Also, audio news. So this is all licensing stuff. Obviously, once you own and control your own intellectual property assets, which is the baseline of an independent author's business, you can then do things like translation and you can turn it into multiple formats. So audio news. Regular listeners to the show will remember that back in 2022, I rewrote my first 3 novels. So that was originally, it was Pentecost, Prophecy and Exodus. And I rebranded those as Stone of Fire, Crypt of Bone, Ark of Blood as the first in my Arcane Thriller series. In 2022, I rewrote those first 3 books because basically I was a better writer, and you can go back and listen to my lessons about that. Well, I'll link it in the show notes. But at the time I was like, I just uncomfortable about the audiobooks. So I withdrew them. Now the basic story is still the same, but my writing craft is a lot better. But now they have been re-recorded and they are back everywhere. So there are 12 Arcane Thriller series, thriller novels and novellas, plus a short story on Audible and Spotify, and Spear of Destiny is coming in September. But you can also, I've got a special audiobook bundle, all 13 books, including Spear of Destiny, plus the short story, bundled for 50% off. So 65 hours of thriller audio if you buy direct. Now, this is in terms of the business model, which, you know, we talk about a lot on this show. The business model of selling direct is a lot about bundling. So I can still make a better profit if you buy or the whole series in audio from me, and you can listen on your BookFunnel your BookFunnel app, which contains ebooks and audio, and it has all the functionality of any other audio listening app. And of course, the more of us who sell direct audio, the more people are going to buy it. So yes, 50% off the whole series. If you go to jfpennbooks.com, you will see it in the bundles and book stacks area. It's actually on the front page right now. And if you miss Spear of Destiny, it is out on my store and it will be out everywhere 1st of September. So yes, I am pretty excited about having the whole series in audio again, because it's very hard to market a series when your first 3 books in a series are not in audio. So this might be another reason I turn the ads back on, the Facebook ads, to my direct store, talking of ads at the moment. So yeah, I'm just feeling very positive at the moment. You know this. I mean, I'm generally very positive, but I'm just excited about focusing on my JF Penn side. I am really thrilled about finishing that draft of Blood Vintage. I did push hard this week. Those of you who write fiction will know how tiring fiction is, and I was pretty exhausted. But I'm excited to get into the editing, and I have my editor, Kristen, booked, who's been on the show, Kristen Tate. So yeah, exciting times. So thanks for all your emails and comments and lots of photos this week, which have been fantastic. Nanette says, I've been listening to the show for about 2 years. Self-publishing can be daunting, but I took it one step at a time following you and your guest's advice, and sent a photo of a lovely cemetery in Salzburg, visited on a river cruise, which was lovely. On X, Nala sent me a beautiful picture also of a cemetery. Visited the Cimitero di Morcote, looking down on Lago di Lugano in Italy, a beautiful place for a final rest. Absolutely gorgeous picture. Bonnie sent a picture of a really yummy cake, listening while making coffee cake for a family reunion. I just have to do the drizzled frosting. Usually I'm in the shower, so I never take pictures. So that's fascinating to me. So you must have like some waterproof earbuds or something. Mike said, I'm normally listening in the car, but today sent a picture from Berg aan de Maas, 20 kilometres north of Maastricht in the Netherlands, walking the dogs along the river. This was after 8 in the evening, 33 degrees C, and very cute dogs in the late sun. So many pictures this week. I love it. You all have to send me more pictures. Kitty said, listening to your show on my bike ride, trying not to swallow bugs while I laugh at something you say. Always fun and helpful to listen to you and your guests, and sent a picture of a lovely straight road with trees heading for the horizon as she cycles along. And finally, Chris sent me a lovely picture of himself running in a Masters race. So for you young'uns out there, Masters is when you get too old and they put you in a Masters bracket. And Chris really encouraged me. He said, I'm quite happy and excited for you that you signed up for a powerlifting contest. I think that's great. I've been a Masters sprinter for 15 years now after taking 30 years off from racing. And also said, you did an awesome job on Spear of Destiny hardback. I love the foil and the binder and the ribbon inside to keep track of where I am. So thank you for all those pictures. I love seeing where you're listening, and also if you have any gorgeous cemeteries for me, I always enjoy those. Please leave a comment on the podcast show notes at The Creative Penn, or on the YouTube channel. Message me on X at The Creative Penn. Email me, send me pictures of where you're listening, joanna@thecreativepenn.com. I love to hear from you. It makes this more of a conversation. So this episode is sponsored by Kobo Writing Life, Kobo's free, fast and easy self-publishing platform. KWL was built by authors for authors, and their team of dedicated book lovers is always working hard to help you reach new readers around the world. Kobo's author-first approach is why they built a promotions tool for you to easily and affordably market your book directly to Kobo readers. There are lots of promotional opportunities for you to keep an eye out for, from daily deals, % off promotions, and buy more, save more sales. You'll be sure to find something that suits your books and marketing plans. The promotional offerings are updated often, so make sure you're regularly taking a look to see what's on offer. And in fact, I have been back in again this week and submitted my books for some more promos. I have a recurring reminder in my diary for every 3 weeks to go in and submit to as many promotions as I can. This is the way to sell books on Kobo, people. If your books are on Kobo Direct, then you must use this promotional tab and you will sell more books. Don't feel you have to just choose one thing to submit to. I literally submit to everything I can every single time. Now, I don't get them all. I just get some of them, but this is the way to sell books on Kobo. And if you're taking part in a promotion, be sure to tell your readers all about it. If you do publish direct on KWL and you don't have access to the promotions tab because you need to be activated for it, email writinglife@kobo.com. That's writinglife@kobo.com, and they will turn it on for you. If you want to learn more about KWL, check out the Kobo Writing Life podcast, available wherever you get your shows, including this one, and find them on social. Create your free account today at kobo.com/writinglife. So this type of corporate sponsorship pays for the hosting, transcription and editing, but my time in creating the show is sponsored by my community at patreon.com/thecreativepenn. Thanks to the 12 new patrons who've joined this week, and thanks to everyone who's been supporting for months and years. If you join the community, you get access to all the backlist videos and audio on creativity and writing, mindset, business, AI, and also my solo podcast episodes for patrons, Q&As, and the office hours we had last week, which were a great hit. We had a lot of fun. I had a gin and tonic because it was Friday afternoon, and boy, can I speak fast when I have a gin and tonic. And I shared what I've been doing with Claude, Midjourney and ChatGPT, as well as translations. And we had 50 people come live asking questions on the chat so I could answer fastest. And lots of happy people who enjoyed the replay. It really was fun, and all the patrons who've been through it have said it's just been super useful. The Patreon is a monthly subscription, the equivalent of buying me a black coffee a month, or a couple of coffees if you're feeling generous, and you get access immediately to everything, all the backlist content. So if you get value from the show and you want more, come on over and join us. Patreon.com, patreon.com/thecreativepenn. And please use the website to join. Do not use the app on Apple, because they will be adding 30% in November 2024. So just go to the website, patreon.com/thecreativepenn. Then you can still use the app, but you will be doing your membership directly. This change will not impact existing membership, only new ones. So nothing will change if you have already subscribed that way. So that's Patreon, patreon.com/thecreativepenn. Right, let's get into the interview. Larry Kasanoff is the CEO of Threshold Entertainment and has made over 200 films as a producer or studio head. Some of his credits include Mortal Kombat, True Lies, Terminator 2, Dirty Dancing, and Academy Award-winning Best Picture, Platoon. He's also worked in the music business with artists like Michael Jackson and the Rolling Stones, which is like, wow. And he has a new book, which is A Touch of the Madness, How to Be More Innovative in Work and Life by Being a Little Crazy. So welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you. But let's just start with a really obvious question. You are so successful in film and music videos. So why write a book at this point in your career?
Well, there are two reasons. First of all, we had a year last year where there were strikes. The actors union struck and the writers union struck. So we couldn't actually work. We couldn't make movies. But more than that, over the last few years, I've seen in a way I never have before, people not only in my industry, but in every industry, scared to move on their creative ideas or their entrepreneurial ideas. And I've never seen it like that. What if it's wrong? What if it fails? What if I get canceled? What if someone doesn't like it? And I was whining to my brother one day about it. And he said, why don't you do something about it? Write a book. And my brother's a writer. And so I did. But it was really just to inspire people that creative idea, that nutso thing that your wife, husband, father, mother, daughter, boss will think it's too nuts. That's the one, and you should embrace it and go for it. So that was really my only purpose.
And we'll come back to that. But why do you think people are more scared now? Is it that the environment is more difficult? Or do you think something has changed, like, I don't know, since the pandemic, like the personality of people?
In a way, it doesn't matter why, but I mean, my opinion is the world ebbs and flows. And we talk about how conservative political correctness was in the last 5 years. After the Italian Renaissance, a few years later, they covered up the Botticellis because there was a whole movement that they were too racy. So this just part of human nature. It just goes. I think this one is a little bit worse because social media and technology and communications means anything that happens gets broadcast immediately all over the world. So I think it's the political correctness that has instilled fear of speaking out in people.
And I mean, that is a challenge. And we'll come back to some of these challenges. But first of all, just the challenge for you in writing a book. You have written, I guess, a lot of different mediums, screenplays and visual and audio things. So what were the challenges you faced in writing the book?
It was really fun because the book is really all stories that happened to me, which I use to illustrate my points on why you should embrace the madness and how to do it. So honestly, once I decided to write it, these are stories I tell my assistants and I torture everyone with. It only took me like 10 days to write the whole book. So it was actually very lovely. It was fun. And I mean, I was just remembering things. And every now and then I would call out my brother and say, can I tell this story? He goes, no, that's too political, or something if I was offensive. But it was really a fun process. And then when I was finished with the book, I called a friend and said, I need a book agent. I know agents, but I know book agents. He said, I know. So he introduced me to a guy named Greg Reed. Greg introduced me to an agent named Bill Gladstone. I mean, I had one call with Greg. I had one call with Bill. We hit it off. Bill said, I love it. Send me the book today. That was a Monday. On Tuesday, he said, I want to rep you. He said, and we got on the phone with our publisher, Glenn from Ben Bella. He read the book by Wednesday, and by Friday, I had a signed deal. So the whole thing was really very lovely and fun and quick and easy, the writing of the book.
I love this. I just want to point out to everyone listening, many people would be like, oh, that's all right for him. But I'm looking at your career and a lot of people listening are just starting out. The reason this was easy for you to get a book deal and an agent, and, we'll come back to the writing, but you have worked for decades to get to a point in your life where people want to work with you, right? Do you have any thoughts for people who are just starting out in whatever industry?
Well, first of all, everyone says that to me. Oh, it must be so easy now. Imagine you're a professional boxer and you've done well and you've won 30 matches. You think in your 31st, the guy in the ring is going to go easy on you because you won some? Sorry. That doesn't happen at all. So the notion that I would love to think that, gee, when I call, everyone wants to work with me. Everyone says yes. No one doesn't call me back. It's just not true. I still have to sometimes slug my way through it, and it still goes. And so that skill of persevering and And one of the things I say in the book is one of the absolute tenets is ask, 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 ask. It never goes away. And you always have to do it. And there are directors you can find who are in their 70s or 80s even who still have to go pitch their movie. So to the people starting out, I would say learn the skill because it's like exercise. It's going to stay with you your whole life. And it is not at the point, you can't just one day say, you know what, I've exercised for 10 years. I'm 30 years old. No, I'm not going to stop. You can't really do that. Same with this. It just always goes. So, I mean, I think the reason people wanted to publish the book is because I found two guys who also, my agent and my publisher, who also have a touch of the madness. But what I did have was a bunch of stories, and the stories are fun, and the stories are relatable, and the stories are fortunate that they are on movies that people have now heard of. So I did have that body of work to draw on. But I didn't get any breaks because I've been around for a while. Gee, I wish I would take it in a second, but it doesn't really happen.
Yes, well, let's come back on it was so fun, I wrote it in 10 days. I've read the book, it's great. And as you say, you're telling stories. So the style itself lends to a more storytelling way of doing it. It's not like a business nonfiction where it's research and chapter. It's lots of stories, which is great. But when I was reading it, it is very your voice as well. Not that I know you, but it reads like your voice. So did you dictate that? Did you type it? Tell people, how did you actually get that down? And then sort of, did you edit it into an order? Like, what was the writing process?
Oh, so I first wrote just this sort of a outline, like a chapter outline. And then I thought, how do I really do this? I never thought of like how I really do it. My brother said to me, you have to give some sort of a framework. So I came up with, I call it create, ask, play. The three things you have to do is you have to create your idea and how to do that. You have to ask, ask, ask. And you should always do it with a playful mindset if you can. But once I did that, the way I always write, the way I write scripts is I just write. I don't think about it. I write quickly. I don't edit myself. I try and get everything down. I write it on a laptop. And then I leave it and I come back later on and I read it. And sometimes I'm shocked at, hey, that's pretty good, or oh, that isn't. And then I go through it again, like painting a barn door. And then you just keep doing codes. And then sometimes you think, well, this story doesn't work, or I need more stories here. So I kind of have to go think or something. But I just try and write as quickly as I can I do try to write like I talk, and I try not to edit myself in the beginning.
So when you got the publisher, did you get a load of edits that took you away from your original vision? How was that process?
They were great. I mean, by the time I sent it to them, I had finished it and polished it a little bit. I gave it to a few people to read who I trusted. And they only had a couple of little comments. They had great copy editing comments, which I loved. I thought it improved things. But no, the whole thing was it was really nice. I mean,
I love you. I love the way you work. And I wonder if it's also because you come from a collaborative industry. Like you said about getting notes there, you're presumably quite used to doing notes, giving notes, getting notes as part of a film making process.
I mean, the point of the book is to inspire people. So what I didn't really put in the book are some of the, let's call them harsher stories of the movie business. But when I compared the notes we get from studios relative to the notes we get from these lovely, erudite, smart publishers, oh my goodness. I mean, you should see the stuff we get in the movie business. So I think my comparison is crazy. We had a script once, the whole script took place at a bar, kind of like Casablanca. And a studio called us and said, oh, I love the script. You got to come down. We were really interested in the movie. So I get down there and all the executives are there and they said, we just have one idea for you. And I said, yeah, sure. What? And they said, well, maybe there could be some sort of like a bar in the movie where they all congregate. The whole movie was about, clearly they hadn't even read the script. So we get those kind of notes all the time. So relatively speaking, I think notes from publishers are much, at least in my experience, are much more helpful and much more constructive. And yeah, one of the things about the movie business is it is incredibly collaborative. You have 1,000 people, you have to marshal them all into the same creative vision. It's a massive operation to make a movie. With a book, it's really you and the typewriter and then your editor. So it's so small. It's so easy to do that. I recently published a few weeks ago a book of photography called Malibu Blonde, where all the money goes to charity. And that's all photography. And it's the same thing. I mean, I work with publishers in Switzerland. And I sent them a lot of pictures and they said, here's how many we want to choose. And they had the right to choose. And we went through a few rounds and it was just such a lovely experience. And the book was #1 on Amazon its first week. And so completely different medium. It's not like a word in it. It's all pictures. But again, the simple nature of so few people between you and the audience, for me, was like a vacation.
I love this framing because so many people on my show, the discussion is how difficult publishing is. And you're like, oh no, it's so easy compared to this. But let's also talk about the speed, because I feel like you have a different perspective on this. So for many people like myself, as an independent author, one of the reasons we have our own independent publishing companies is so we can get our books directly to the customer with no barrier. And so I can finish, edit, and then I can send it out on Shopify and people can buy now and I get the money in my bank account now. That's how quick it can be now. And obviously I work with professional editors, designers, etc. But when the book's ready, it goes out. Now, you said you wrote this during the strikes, so that's over a year ago. How was that timeline between finishing and it going out compared to the film industry?
Well, yeah, that is different because, I mean, we finished the book, but then they said, okay, we're going to rush it out. And it was still 6 months before they got it out. And that was a real rush. And so there was really nothing for me to do then because it was just their time, I guess, of printing catalogs and pre-selling to the Barnes and Nobles of the world and things like that. But, you know, what can you do? A movie business, you have to wait too. I mean, it's not like I don't have other things to do. So it was fine. But there was no reason it had to be out in March before October, other than my own anxiousness to get it out. So it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes movies take decades, right?
Movies can take decades too. I mean, the photography book, because it's all glossy and had to print it, that took 9 months from, okay, we're doing this to coming out too. But again, it was really nothing for me to do. That's just their process of printing and scheduling and selling. And then when the book comes out, there's stuff to do. But no, it was fun.
I love this. Is this your nature? Are you just a happy, positive person?
I try to be, you know, but it is a funny time now where especially the movie business has been struggling with these strikes and everything. Boy, you meet people and they're so depressed and and it's not like it's not challenging. I don't want to gloss over it, but it just doesn't help. I mean, being negative or saying, oh my God, this sucks, or it doesn't help. The other thing is I read an enormous amount of history, not only film history, but just history. And in that perspective, so many of these things have happened before. There's nothing really new happening now. I mean, we're very few new things happening now. And so I try and keep that perspective and think, well, how is being negative and complaining going to help me? It's not going to make me feel better. It's not going to make my movies or books advance any further. So why do it? And yeah, I think we say of the photography book, Malibu Blonde, and of our movies, our mission is to bring back fun. I think one of the things that's happened in the world is people are just scared to have fun. They just don't have as much fun anymore. I mean, even Los Angeles has changed. There aren't as many parties or events. And so, yeah, we are trying to bring back fun. We're having a big party on August 17th in Malibu for Malibu Blonde. And the whole thing is come bring back fun. So, yeah, I do think it's really important. And I think the audience wants it. I think they want it in books, in movies, in TV, and art, and music. I think they want fun.
No, I agree. And escapism, like for me, I go to the movies. I like big explosion movies. So, you know, the movies that you've done, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I like the movie. I want to see guns and explosions and lots of body count. And I write thrillers. And I was like, you know, I totally agree with you. And we take ourselves so seriously. We're artists and it all becomes a bit too serious, I guess.
Well, I think that we get that here too with people. You know, I had a student apply for an internship and she said, I want to make movies that change the parameters of how people think about art. I said, well, what's the example of a movie that does that? And she said, oh, that's a good question. I never thought of that. So people virtue signal a lot. I mean, one of the things I also try and espouse in A Touch of the Madness is to really, you do have to play it like a game. In a state of play, which is not easy to, I admit, to stay in all the time, but in a state of play, you will be more creative, you'll be more receptive to ideas, you'll be a better problem solver, and you'll have a better life. And so if you take the same two examples and you look at it from a state of play or a state not of play, they're very, 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 very different. In one of my first, actually the first movie I was involved in, it was this sort of Game of Thrones. It was before Game of Thrones. It was like a Game of Thrones ripoff in Italy, which I hadn't ordered, and I had just been made head of production, my new job. And my boss, who was a great guy, said, and we want everything. We want explosions and violence and sword fights and love and sex. And someone yelled, and snakes and wizards. And we all went, yes, and snakes and wizards. There were no snakes and wizards in the movie, but we thought that was funny. And so every time we would finish a development meeting with the staff in Italy as they were in pre-production, we'd say, and snakes and wizards. And we'd all go, snakes and wizards. So I get to Italy, my first movie. I have no idea what I'm doing. There was a seasoned producer who was helping me. And at one point, they say they have a surprise for me that week. And I'm so great. And they get really excited. And the day comes. And now we're having lunch. And they're all in a semicircle around me. We're in Rome, outside of Rome. And I see that we're looking at the hills. I don't see anything. And then I see a little dot of sort of dirt. And it's getting bigger and bigger. And I realize it's a truck coming. And now there's a band playing. I don't know where they got a band. And a truck backs up and it bursts open. And out come a ton of people dressed as wizards who were snake charmers. I mean, like boa constrictors and Burmese pythons. And remember, there were no snakes and wizards in the movie. We had just forgot to tell them it was a joke. And so they clearly have gone to all this time and effort and money. Not in a state of play, I would have said, how could you have done this? You didn't check. You wasted my time. You wasted our money. This is what are we going to do? Where are these? In a state of play, which I was, because I couldn't believe I was on a movie. And it was fun, and they'd gone to a lot of trouble. And in Italy, you have wine at lunch with on your movie sets, and it's not easy to say no to a Burmese python staring you in the face. So in that state of play, I said, let's put them all in the movie, and everyone cheered, and we just threw him in the movie. Now, you know what? The movie's terrible, but it made a fortune, and the snakes and wizards look great. Not in a state of play, I would have screwed up the whole thing.
I love that. So I'm going to come back to what you just said there, but I want to talk about this state of play because it does fit a bit like with your A Touch of Madness. So how do we identify this touch of madness and get into that state of play? So for example, I'm a professional writer. I work, this is my full-time job. So I get up in the morning, like today I worked on my latest novel, and some days that's great and I'm in a play zone, and sometimes it's a real slog. So how can I and other people listening, how can we like reset and get into that state of play? Is there a way that you recommend we do that, or how can we access that touch of madness?
Well, I think if you have a touch of the madness, I think everyone has the potential for it. And I believe deep down, we all know what we want. It's there. And so I did a documentary a few years ago on mindfulness with a Zen Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh, who has recently passed away, but who brought mindfulness to the West. And I met him under these very unusual circumstances. I called this peaceful Buddhist monk to see if he would be a good inspiration for a character in Mortal Kombat, which is hardly a peaceful movie. But in so doing, I just became great friends with a guy. And I said, I've been here for 2 hours. I feel like I've been on vacation. What's your secret? He said, no secret, practice. And I became friends with him, and I started practicing mindfulness. And he asked me to do a documentary. And so for me, it's getting still. And for me, it's mindfulness. And for me, it's the notion that, okay, if I'm starting to drift out of a state of play, stop. Whatever I'm doing, stop if I can. Go in the middle of the day, go for a walk, play with my dog. I bring my dog to work. Do something to reset yourself, because that is the most important thing. And if you're in a good state of mind, everything else will come. And you have to so one, you have to prioritize your state of mind. And two, you have to get some practice that enables you to control and come back to a still state of mind. For me, it's mindfulness. For someone else, it might be knitting or shooting basketball or whatever. And once you're in a still state of mind, you can access that state of play. And Thich Nhat Hanh had a great expression, which is calligraphy in my office: be still and know. And once you get still, so think of a mountain lake. If it's perfectly still in the morning, it reflects the clouds and the sky and the mountaintops perfectly. If it's all choppy and windy, it doesn't. So think of that stillness, and be still, and that will access your touch the madness. You will say, this is what I really want to. Now that I'm still, I know what I really want to do is teach cows how to answer the phone, and I'm going to do it. That's what you want. Now you have to have the courage to do it, which is what ask and play comes into. But it's prioritizing your state of mind as the most important thing you have to do. And then it's having a practice which enables you to do that.
Well, then, how about the difficulty with both in the film industry and with books, where people say, like you talk about Mortal Kombat, for example, is more like a franchise, right? It has lots of IP, and people say, oh, well, do you know what? We want another one of those, or we want Terminator 18. And you're like, does that really have a touch of madness? Is that a business decision, or is that a creative decision? So how do you balance the business side with wanting to do something that people might seem a bit mad?
So when I started Mortal Kombat, no one had ever made a hit movie from a video game. And everyone thought I was crazy. And I mean, it's easy to look back now. All great ideas are obvious in hindsight, but at the time, people would constantly say, "What are you doing? You're giving up your career. You have this one. I left this great job, and it's nuts." So that was a touch of the madness at that time. But the way I balance the two sides is the first thing I do when I look at any project, book or movie, is I forget about the business and I say creatively, do I love it? Do I just love this? Because you're right. It might be quick like my book, or it might take 10 years like some movies, but I got to love it. Or else I can't get up every day and be happy pitching it, talking about it, working on it, writing it, designing it, and so forth. So, and then I ignore the business side. Then once I know I love it creatively, I ignore the creative side, and then I look at the business. Can I get this financed? Can this make money? Can we do this? And if they're both yeses, then I do it. But part of my goal with the things I do is to succeed. I want a lot of people to see my movies and read my books. So to me, that business part of it is part of the whole thing. I mean, I don't. There are some filmmakers who say, "Well, I don't care if anyone sees my movie." I do. That's the fun. That's the game. You want people to see your movie. You want to go to the theater and have people lined up to see it and cheer. So that to me is part of the game, and it's fun. And the way I got Mortal Kombat, it was testing as an arcade game in Chicago. It was just an arcade game. We used to go and put in points in machines to play. And I turned to the chairman of the company who had it, who I knew from previous arcade games and previous movies. And I said, "This is Star Wars meets Enter the Dragon. It's my two favorite genres. I don't care if it's never worked before. If you give me the rights, I guarantee you I will produce it in every medium in the world. Movies, TV, animation, live theater, you name it." And the chairman of the company looked at me and said, "Piece of crap video game." So he didn't even think it was worth it. But then my goal was to do what you just said, was to make it a franchise, which we're still producing. We're still making Mortal Kombat. So that was the goal. But it didn't start that way. It started with people telling me I was crazy.
No, that's great. And then if we could just talk about this idea of quality, which again, books and movies struggle with, right? You said just a while ago, the movie was terrible. It made a fortune. And this is what's so funny, right? Sometimes we write these things that we think are really important or whatever, and nobody wants them. And sometimes that something just hits and does really well that is just unexpected. So how do you deal with that in your career and creativity? Are you, like you said, are you aiming to try and have a hit, or is it all just a crapshoot, as an American might say?
No, I'm aiming to have a hit. I'm always aiming to have a hit. So I wanted to be a movie producer since I was a little kid. And I got very, very lucky and got a great job out of school as head of production acquisitions and co-production for an independent film studio called Vestron. This was in the 80s when home video was taking off. So home video was a boom like today. Streaming was a boom and people needed content. My job out of school was to run a film slate that needed to deliver 80 movies a year to the company, 80. Today, a film studio would make 12 movies. I had to make 80, and I didn't know what I was doing. So, and my instructions were, do whatever the hell you want if you don't lose money. And so, yeah, in the beginning, I was so scared. So we made, I would lose money. So we made low budget movies like the one I just mentioned, action, rom-coms, horror movies, and things like that. And they were fun. And we tried to make them as good as we can. But I kept remembering, if I don't make money, I'm not going to be able to keep doing this. And then I got a script one day for a movie called Platoon. And Platoon was not this kind of a movie. It was a very serious movie about the Vietnam War and the psychological effect it had on kids going to it. The tagline was, "The first casualty of war is innocence." The actors were not stars. They were stars later, but they weren't stars in the beginning. We always put at least sort of movie stars in our movies, but I loved it. And I thought, I just got to make it. I just love the movie. And I went to my boss and I said, "This isn't our usual one, but I just have a feeling about it." And he said, "You're crazy. That's not what we do." And I fought. And he said, "Okay, look, you're head of production. It's your decision. But if it fails, you're fired. So what do you want to do?" And I was like, I don't know, a few months into the best job in the world. And I thought, well, I didn't join the movie business to play it safe. So I greenlit Platoon. And when I saw Platoon, when we was finally finished, I'm the only guy in history to giggle his way through that movie because I thought, oh my God, I'm not getting fired. It was so good. And it was so good, it did win Best Picture that year. And a few months later, I ran into the director one night in a bar in New York, and he bought me a drink, and he said, "Kid, I always liked you. You have a touch of the madness." And I thought, "A touch of the madness? Does he mean I'm a little crazy? Is he calling me crazy?" And then it occurred to me, well, my boss was crazy to let a 25-year-old kid run an 80-picture film slate. Oliver, the director, had a touch of the madness by insisting on doing a Vietnam movie the way no one ever had. And I had a touch of the madness by betting my career on it. So then I realized, and this is the long answer to your short question, that it's all a touch of the madness. And bottom line, I can tell you all the things I do. It's got to be creative. It's got to be business. I look at everybody, every script, every piece of art, every casting, and I ask myself just instinctively, is there a touch of the madness there? And if there is, I go for it. And if there isn't, I don't. And I turn away lots of actors and lots of people who are very talented, who are very good, but in my mind, they don't have that touch of the madness. I can look at people's eyes and see it. At least I think I can. So that is really my determining factor. And that became my touchstone for my life and my career. So when I decided to write a book about this, it wasn't like I had to dredge around to think about it. I've been thinking about this my whole life. It just never occurred to me that that's what I was doing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I use the metaphor of Plato's chariot with the white horse and the dark horse. And can I let my dark horse run? Like, is my dark horse running, or am I reining it in?
That's great.
Yeah, too much. And sometimes I know I've written things where my dark horse just wasn't even there. And so now I'm more established, I guess. But it's very hard at the beginning. Like you said, that first job when you had to make 80 a year. Not every single film you would have loved or been that involved with, but later it feels like now you just love creating. So you're just creating and creating.
I do. I love it. I'm as excited about the movie business as the first day. I wanted to be a producer since I was a little kid. Then when I started doing it, I love it. And I still wake up as excited as can be. And what's exciting is bringing the projects I have to life. I think of these characters as my friends. I know them. I think sometimes, oh, Lucian Fabulous, he's a character in a movie. Lucian would do that. And I love creating and I love doing that. And get a movie made today in a conservative Hollywood, you need to raise $100 million and convince a lot of people it's a great idea. So you have to be in love or it's a tough game.
Yeah, well, then another thing that's interesting is this idea of longevity in an industry, because when you started out, there would have been other people who started with you, and they will not all be around anymore. And this is what we also talk about in the author industry, which is the longer you do this, the more likely you are to be successful. But so many people fall away. So has that happened? And what is your tips for longevity in the career? How do you keep loving it after decades?
Talent is 50% of the battle. If you don't have perseverance in any industry, in any game, in any sport, forget it. And as I said, I think I'm really good at discerning talent or a touch of the madness in 2 seconds. But whether that person will have the fortitude to stay with it, only time will tell. Character isn't made, it's revealed, and you can only tell that. And so there are people who just for one reason or another drop out. Now, sometimes people drop out because they determine, you know what, this isn't really for me. It's not as exciting as I thought. I can make a lot more money in the family business of whatever. And that's really what I care about. But if you do love it, there's really no other option. And that is where I think, especially in creative industries, it should be full of people who really don't have another option in their minds, because it's just what they have to do.
Yeah, and so, I feel that.
Yeah, and I think that's the right thing for you. The number one way we lose aspiring actors and actresses, lose meaning they go away, leave Hollywood, is by giving them a job. You would think that's insane, but there's an enormous amount of people when you finally say, okay, you want to be an actor? We like you. Here's your shot. Never hear from them again. Whether that's the fear or they don't really want to do it, that I try and inspire people out of in my book. But again, there's just so much you can do. And those are just not it's not right for them. And that's okay. But it's not.
So let's come back. Earlier, you talking about ask anyone anything. It's in the book, ask anyone anything. And I read that the whole section is really interesting. And this is a real challenge for authors who mostly are introverts, who work alone. We much prefer the page, and we're not out and about. Like someone said to me once, oh, just come to Cannes and pitch at this party. And I'm like, that's the most terrifying thing for me, possibly. So what are your thoughts on pitching for introvert authors?
Well, so I have two thoughts on that. So I had a great professor in college who taught me this. So I've been doing this since college, since before I was a producer, and it worked even then. And a few years ago during the pandemic, we were making an animated movie at Universal called Bobbleheads, about characters with bobbly heads. And we had this idea to get Cher as Bobblehead Cher, to use her likeness. And everyone said, again, she'll never do it. She's never done an animated movie. So we called, and I called and called. And long story short, Cher did the movie, and she was fantastic in it. And when the movie came out, People magazine interviewed her and said, you've never done an animated movie. Why did you do this one? And she said, I never did an animated movie before because no one ever asked me before. So if you can imagine Cher, who's one of the most iconic, famous, talented women on the planet, has never been asked to do something. Can you imagine who in your own life you're not asking because you're assuming, oh, everyone asked them, and maybe no one's asked them. So why don't you do it? And so today, so then how do you do it? You start small. And today, honestly, it's much easier. When I started doing it in college, there was no email. So you actually had to call somebody or write them an actual letter. Now you can email, text, DM. There's so many ways to get to people, but start small. Call Uncle Phil and ask him why he never comes to holidays. I mean, you can do anything. Call your local grocery store and say, how come you don't stock this brand that I like? Just start. And once you get into the methodology of it and into the habit of it, it gets easier and easier because you realize, well, so what if they say no? What's going to happen? This guy isn't going to fall in. I mean, I call people all the time and ask them things. It's like your question at the beginning. Well, everyone wants to deal with me. No, I wish. A lot of people don't answer me or say no to me. I'm like, who could say no to me? My overinflated ego. But the answer, unfortunately, lots of people. But so what? All you need is one yes.
Yeah. And yeah, I know my listeners are sitting there going, well, but how? So in terms of so let's say I do send an email and it comes to someone I've identified because I've spent some time researching them and I know this person would be interesting. So this might be a producer, I guess, or I'm not sending it to an actor. I'm sending it to a producer, or who else would I send it to? And what would be like the one thing that's going to make them interested in even a conversation?
So if you want to sell the film rights to your book?
Yeah.
So you'd send it to producers or you'd send it to agents. Now in the UK, by the way, the book agents and the film agents are actually much nicer than in Los Angeles. So I shouldn't say that, but they are, and they're much more literary. They tend to read more, and so what you have to think is when you're selling a book for a movie, you're really selling the plot, and you're not, because one of the things you can do in a book is you can obviously write what the character is thinking. In a movie, you have to show. A long time ago, when Jurassic Park came out, in those days, they would auction books. And I was working with Jim Cameron in those days, and we were, I think, number 2 on the auction list. So if Steven Spielberg didn't take it, we got it, and Spielberg took it. At the same time, Bonfire of the Vanities was being auctioned by Tom Wolfe. Brilliant book. And the two books got huge money, and they were both in production at the same time. One is a multi-billion-dollar franchise and is still getting made, and the other failed. Why? Because if you just take Tom Wolfe's book, Bonfire of the Vanities, and you just take the plot, it's about kind of miserable guy who ruins his life and the life of everyone around him. It's not so intriguing. If you take Jurassic Park, Dinosaur Park goes awry, that's a movie. So you have to think, what is it in your book that translates into the different medium? You have to understand that, because they're going to throw away 3/4 of what you wrote because you're saying, and then he thought this, and you can't do that in a movie. So the first thing is, okay, why? And then why is your book unique? And you need a pitch line. Again, think about, Michael Crichton, every one of his books almost is just a brilliant pitch for a movie. So think about, you're going to hate this, but think about describing your book in one sentence. And think about 2 things. That's a log line. And then there's a tagline. And a tagline is kind of the slogan. The log line is a line or 2 about the plot. Tagline is, if you look at the movie Alien, the first Alien movie, the tagline was a genius one: in space, no one can hear you scream. So think of those 2 things. That's what people are going to buy. Then you have to think to yourself, okay, well, what characters do I have in my book? Let's say my characters are all 11 years old. Well, that's going to be hard because there are not a lot of 11-year-old movie stars. So people are looking for star actors, but they say, well, there are 3 roles in my book for men and women who are 40 years old. You think, oh my God, this is great. There's a ton of stars for it. That's what you want to do. Help the producer or the agent who you might think is very creative, but needs help, say, envision it. Here's the title, here's the log line, here's the tagline, here's who should play my character. Help them envision it, because that's how they're going to resell it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say then, you said you're selling the plot. And again, as authors, most people are told it's all about character first. But it's so interesting because you're starting with the plot there, and it's got to be visual on the screen. And that's, I think, I certainly write that way because that's the kind of movies I like. So I like that kind of book as well. But it's very interesting that what we're told as authors is kind of different to screenwriters and movie people.
But maybe for novels, that's correct. And certainly you want the characters to shine in a movie, but you have to show what they do. You can't tell. I mean, that's the number one screenwriting rule is show, don't tell. I mean, he's cold is different than he's in his underwear in the Himalayas in a snowstorm, turning blue. So it's all visual. You have to think visually. And if you write that way in your books, then you're in great shape. I mean, Crichton's books are like that. They read just like a movie script. And so then it's fantastic. People don't like to be terribly analytical. And remember, the process of turning a book into a movie is a long, expensive one. You have to hire writers, you have to get someone to do it. Sometimes that takes years and costs millions of dollars. So people are reticent to do it unless there's something great. But you said something in the beginning of this I want to challenge you on. You said, well, I'm not saying to an actor. Why not?
Okay, so that's...
Well, okay. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't just send it to anybody, but if you think, look, like I did with Cher, if you think, this is just perfect for whoever, Tom Hanks, what do you get to lose? And again, all you have to do is email today. You don't have to call the guy. You don't have to go to Con and pitch him. I mean, you should, but you can work your way up to that. You can just email them. So what if they don't answer? Try. You never know. I mean, sometimes people take a shot at things. I get stuff like that all the time. And I'm pretty good if I think it's interesting. Here's an example. During the pandemic, we couldn't cast like normal. And we like, in our action movies, I like putting in, wherever I can, new people, because I think the audience likes that. And so we found a couple of people, especially one on Instagram. And there's a woman we found on Instagram, and she's on the cover of my Melba Bond book, and she's now set to star in one of our next movies. And we just found her on Instagram. And then she found me at the same time and have been working together. So why not? Well, why not say, I mean, if I said to you, whatever, like your last book, who's the star of that movie? Who really should play your main character? Do you know?
Oh, well, I'm totally sending my book to Nicolas Cage then.
Why not?
I love Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage has a touch of the madness.
Oh, he does. He does.
Well, of course, send Nicolas Cage and be bold as hell. Only you can play this. I wrote this for you. You know, people in America assume everyone in the UK is smarter than they are. So use that. You're an author in Bath, England, and I want Nick Cage I want you to be in my movie. So I had to send it to you first. I wrote this out of passion, and yeah, why not?
Oh, you've inspired me. You've inspired me. That is great. Actually, no, that really helps. We're almost out of time, but I do want to ask you about technology, because in the book you say, let technology serve your idea, not the other way around. And you and your company, Threshold, have been at the forefront of technological innovation, the first morphing in a movie in Terminator 2. And I bet you everyone can picture that in their head. But now, like, the part of the strikes was generative AI. There's a lot of AI kind of coming or happening already for video, music, books, writing. So what are your thoughts on how things are changing, the good things that are happening, the challenges with generative AI?
For the movie business, I think there's an enormous amount of opportunity in AI before the machines take over. So because I was involved in Terminator 2, we used to think about this in a development way, and now it's really happening. So it is kind of unusual, but whether you like it or don't, the first thing is it's happening. It's coming. It's a tidal wave. You can't stop a tidal wave, so you better learn how to surf. So it's coming. But my point is, if you just jump on the bandwagon because everyone's doing it, you're going to fail. If you think to yourself, here's a problem and AI could solve it, you won't. So for me, my belief is one of the problems and the challenges in the movie business is movies have gone a little too expensive. So people are more conservative and it's harder to make money. All AI does for us in that category is things that we do anyway, just quicker, faster, and better. It's no different than an assembly line to manufacturing. So in the entire history of the movie business and the whole industrial revolution, I mean, every new invention, everyone thought, oh my God, that's going to be it. People thought TV would ruin theaters and then home video would ruin theater. It doesn't. It just makes the whole pie bigger and the slices smaller, but the whole game is getting bigger. So for me, for AI, we think, well, we can show things, we can do things that we were doing before, just with better technology. So, for example, one of the big misnomers about the strike, the actor strike, was they kept saying, well, what if there are digital stunt people and digital extras? We've been using digital extras for 15 years. I mean, what do you think? Every time you see a Coliseum, they got 60,000 people to sit there? Or we used to throw people off buildings out, human beings. We don't do that anymore. We used to get I wanted a panther for Mortal Kombat. When Mortal Kombat looked at this animatronic, the panther came and looked at this animatronic 7-foot 4-arm creature and there's no way. Today, we would never bring a panther on a set. You just do it digitally. It's just better. So AI for the movies enables you to do things with visual effects that we've been doing anyway, just better, faster, cheaper. That's great, because all we should care about, and all you should care about as writers, is the audience. And you don't work for the producer. I always tell people, you don't work for the director, you don't work for the studio, you work for the audience. And your audience just wants to see a great movie or read a great book or whatever. They don't care how you did it. And nor should they bother caring, nor should you burden them with it. So if I can, and an establishing shot, I started a new company recently called Supergiant Studios, where any client can come to us and star in a short film with a celebrity, with a Hollywood celebrity. It's a great bucket list thing to do, and it's working really well. And we just had Tom Arnold from True Lies in one of the movies. And so it's a great client bucket list thing to do. And one of the things is, because they're short films and we want to keep the cost as low as we can for the client, we want to say establishing shot Bath, England, year 1. Well, we can do that now in these little movies, whereas before there's no way we could do that. So it's great. Just like Morphing was great. Just like 3D Steadicam, which we helped invent, was great. People are just scared because they're scared. But the final thing is, any new technology has an upside and a downside. Water has an upside and a downside. You don't want to be around a tidal wave, but it's great. So I think it's just fear. It's just the fear we have to get over.
And creative people will keep creating regardless.
Everyone forgets this, but when laptops became prevalent, everyone said, oh, well, now everyone has access to a computer that can help you with everything. Everyone's going to be Shakespeare. Well, you know what? Everyone's not Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Great and talent is hard, and AI is a tool. And if you use it as a tool, it'll help you be a good whatever you do. But that's it. And I think it's fantastic.
Brilliant. I love that. So where can people find the book and everything you do online?
So the book is every place books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or they can go to atouchofthemadness.com and find out. I'm at larrykasanoff.com or at Larry Kasanoff on Instagram or thresholdentertainment.com.
Thanks for your time, Larry. That was great.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
So I hope you found the episode with Larry interesting today, and that you might consider the ideas of yours that have that touch of madness. Perhaps you put them aside as too impractical or too out there, but maybe now is the time. As ever, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment on the podcast show notes at thecreativepenn.com or on the YouTube channel. Message me on X at thecreativepenn or email me, Joanna at thecreativepenn.com. Send me pictures of where you're listening. Next Monday, I'm talking to Andrea Wilk about author mindset, as well as publishing in German and more. In the meantime, happy writing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You can find the backlist episodes and show notes at thecreativepenn.com/podcast. And you can get your free author blueprint at thecreativepenn.com/blueprint. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on Facebook and X at The Creative Penn, or on Instagram and Facebook at JFPennAuthor. Happy writing, and I'll see you next time.